I'm going to start with the part that still feels embarrassing to admit, because on paper I should have seen it coming. For 5 years, I'd been the person everyone leaned on when things were on fire. I wasn't the loudest in meetings. I wasn't the one cracking jokes in Slack. But when a client escalation hit at 7:12 p.m., my phone rang. When finance needed a forecast rebuilt overnight because someone accidentally changed assumptions, they came to my desk, not my managers. I worked at a mid-sized tech company in Chicago, big enough to have layers of leadership and small enough that politics could change your life in a single hallway conversation. I was in revenue operations. If you don't know what that is, it's basically the glue role between sales, finance, and the systems that track money. People love us when the numbers look clean, and they hate us when anything doesn't reconcile. My manager, Darren, used to say I was steady, like it was a compliment. But the truth was, I was the one who made Darren look competent. He'd come in late, talk big in leadership syncs, and then forward me the tough stuff with a 3-word message, "Need this today." I didn't fight him. I didn't complain. I figured it was the price of being trusted. And I told myself the same thing everyone tells themselves in corporate America. If you keep your head down and deliver, the company eventually notices. That's the lie you repeat until it becomes your personality. The promotion felt like proof that maybe I hadn't wasted my time. It happened after a brutal quarter. We'd just signed a multi-year enterprise renewal with a healthcare client that had been threatening to churn. The deal was messy. Discounts, phased rollouts, a renewal that only stayed alive because I rebuilt the usage model to show value in a way the client's CFO could understand. Sales took the credit, obviously. That's their job. But 2 days later, my VP, Marissa, stopped by my desk. "Do you have a minute?" she asked. When a VP says that, you don't say no. Your stomach just tightens, and you follow them like you're about to be sentenced. She didn't take me to a conference room. She walked me to the open area by the windows where teams ate lunch and pretended they didn't work through it. Darren was already there. HR was there too. Lena, the business partner who always spoke softly but never said anything meaningless. Marissa smiled. "I want to recognize something." I remember the way people half turned in their chairs. The room got that polite, awkward quiet. Marissa said, "This quarter was the most complicated we've had in 2 years, and a lot of it stayed together because of you. So, we're promoting you to senior manager." Senior manager? I swear my brain didn't process it at first. It was like hearing your name called in a language you understand but weren't expecting. Darren slapped my shoulder. "Well deserved, man. Seriously." HR handed me a printed letter like it was a diploma. There were a few claps, some smiles, a couple people who looked annoyed, which is how you know it's real. Marissa leaned in and said, "You'll get the official email. Comp will follow. Congrats." And that was it. No long speech. No confetti. Just a handshake and a piece of paper that made 5 years feel like they meant something. That night, I took my wife, Claire, to dinner. Nothing crazy, just a neighborhood Italian spot where the booths were cracked, and the wine was cheaper than the lighting made it look. She watched me talk like I'd been holding my breath for months. "So it's official?" she asked, like she didn't want to jinx it. "Yeah," I said. "Senior manager. Finally." Claire smiled, but there was relief behind it, not excitement. We'd been living careful for a while, pushing off buying a bigger place, saying next year to a lot of things. "This changes things," she said quietly. I nodded. "It's supposed to." When we got home, I opened my laptop because I wanted to see it in black and white. I wanted to take a screenshot. I wanted the email thread, the timestamp, something that couldn't be taken back with a smile and an apology. The HR portal logged me in like always. Same bland homepage, same corporate blue. I clicked my profile, and my title still read, Revenue Operations Manager, pending promotion, approval. Pending. Not updated, not effective. Pending. At first, I thought it was just timing. Systems lag. Someone in HR forgot to push a button. Then I saw a link I'd never noticed before. View approval workflow. I clicked it. A chain appeared, boxes and names, each step marked with a status. Marissa, approved. HR business partner, approved. Compensation, approved. Finance, approved. And then the last box. Authorization, not completed. No name, no timestamp, just a blank final step. Like a door that refused to show who was holding the key. I stared at it longer than I should have, because suddenly the handshake didn't feel like a win. It felt like a performance. And the worst part was, I knew exactly who would benefit if that last step never happened. Darren. He'd keep the results I delivered. The team I basically ran, and the credit for developing talent. Without ever giving me the title that made me expensive. I didn't know it yet, but that missing authorization wasn't an accident. It was a decision. And the next morning, Darren walked into the office smiling like nothing was wrong, like my future was already sitting in his pocket. The next morning, I got to the office early, partly because I couldn't sleep, and partly because I needed to prove to myself I wasn't being paranoid. At 7:03 a.m., the HR portal still showed pending. I refreshed, logged out, logged back in. Same thing. I told myself not to spiral. Systems lag. Workday takes a day. People have to click buttons. Normal. But then I noticed something else that hadn't been there the night before. Under the workflow, there was a tiny line in gray text. Process last updated 6:04 p.m. yesterday, after the public handshake, after the letter, after I'd already left for dinner with Claire. I clicked into the process history view. It was buried behind two menus like it didn't want to be found. A timeline loaded, timestamps, actions, system notes. Most of it was generic, approved, advanced, compensation validated. Then I saw a line that made my throat tighten. X is 6:04 p.m. Initiator action recorded. And next to it, initiator. Darren M. I stared at the screen, waiting for my brain to produce a more innocent explanation. Maybe Darren had to submit the paperwork after the VP announced it. Maybe that was standard. Maybe he was doing the admin part. But the word initiator didn't feel like admin. It felt like ownership. And if Darren owned the process, Darren could also reshape it. I didn't confront him immediately, not because I was scared of him, but because I know how this works. The first person who sounds emotional loses credibility. The calm person becomes reasonable. The upset person becomes difficult. So I did what I always do when something doesn't make sense. I collected facts. I printed the process history page to PDF. I took photos of the letter HR handed me the day before. I saved the promotion email Marissa had sent to leadership. Because yes, it had gone out. And yes, it used my new title in the subject line like it was already real. Then I waited until 9:15 a.m., when Darren finally wandered in with coffee and that relaxed expression people get when they've never had to worry about details. He stopped at my desk like nothing had changed. "Morning, champ," he said. "Congrats again." I kept my voice neutral. "Thanks. Quick question. Do you know when the system updates? My profile still shows pending." Darren didn't miss a beat. "Oh yeah, that. Totally normal. HR systems are always behind. Give it a few days." "A few days?" I asked. Marissa said comp was already approved. He shrugged like it was boring. Budget owners sign off. It's a formality. We're closing out end-of-year allocations. Finance is slow. He said it the way people say the weather is bad, like no one is responsible and there's nothing you can do. Then he leaned closer, lowered his voice, and added, "Honestly, don't poke it too hard. You don't want to draw attention when they're in cost control mode." That sentence landed in my chest in a way I didn't like, because it wasn't advice. It was a warning dressed as concern. At 10 Kiaruban, we had our weekly pipeline meeting, sales leaders, finance partner, RevOps, Darren running it like a talk show host. Halfway through, someone from Sales Ops typed in the chat, "Congrats on the promo, man." Before I could answer, Darren laughed and said out loud, "Yeah, pending official paperwork, but he's basically there." Basically there. Like I was a flight that had landed but wasn't allowed to open the doors. People chuckled politely and moved on. I didn't smile. I didn't react. I just wrote it down. After the meeting, I walked straight to Lena's desk, HR partner, the same person who'd handed me the letter. I didn't ask, is Darren sabotaging me? Because that's how you get labeled. Instead, I said, can you tell me which step is missing in the authorization chain? The portal doesn't show the approver. Lena's expression stayed calm, but her eyes flicked to my screen when I turned it toward her. She scanned the timeline, and for a second, something tight moved across her mouth, like she'd just read something she didn't want to acknowledge. Then she asked, carefully, did Darren tell you it was normal? Yes. She nodded slowly, like she was choosing words. Certain approvals are confidential by design. The system won't display the approver to everyone. Okay, I said, but you can see it. Lena didn't answer immediately. She glanced toward Darren's glass office. The blinds were open. He was laughing with someone from sales, leaning back like a man who'd never been denied anything. Then Lena said, your promotion action is tied to a position change. That position is attached to a cost center. Cost center changes trigger an authorization step that's outside HR. Finance, I said. Budget owner, she corrected gently. Not always finance. Sometimes the budget owner is the department head. My stomach dropped a half-inch. Darren? She didn't confirm it. She didn't deny it either. She just added, and the record shows Darren initiated an edit at 6:04 p.m. yesterday. That's why the chain restarted. So it wasn't a lag. It was a reset. I felt heat rise behind my eyes. Not tears, just that tight anger you get when someone steals something from you while smiling. I kept my voice even. What did he edit? Lena looked at me like she wanted to answer, like she was measuring the risk of helping me against the risk of letting this stand. Then she said, I can't tell you specifics of his action, but I can tell you what happens in practice. She lowered her voice. Managers sometimes adjust the job change request to fit budget constraints. That can mean changing the effective date, or shifting the position to a different cost center, or changing the comp component so it looks smaller. And that would send it to a different approver, I said. Yes, she said. And it can also remove the visibility that a VP would have on the final step. That hit harder than I expected, because it meant Darren didn't have to say no to Marissa's face. He could just reroute the paperwork until it died quietly in someone else's queue, where no one would notice unless they were looking. I sat back. So what do I do? Lena held my gaze. If you escalate emotionally, it becomes a personality issue. If you escalate with documentation, it becomes a process issue. Then she added, and if you want to understand what changed, don't ask Darren, ask the system. I left her desk with my jaw tight and my hands steady. Back at my computer, I opened the process history again and expanded the hidden details. There was a small drop-down called Related Actions, things linked to the same position. A list appeared. One entry stood out because it was created at 6:04 p.m. sharp. Position Management, Edit Costing Allocation. I clicked it. The page loaded, and there it was, in plain text. Cost Center Owner. Darren M. For a moment, I felt something close to relief, not because it was fixed, but because I wasn't crazy. I wasn't imagining sabotage. It was right there, logged, time-stamped, real. That night, I stopped being the guy who believed hard work spoke for itself. I became the guy who understood that in corporate life, paper trails speak louder than people. I saved the page. I exported the record. I forwarded the system log to my personal notes in a way that wouldn't trigger alerts. Then I sat there, staring at the screen, waiting for a response from the workflow. Nothing moved, no approvals, no updates, no next step. And then silence, the kind that means something's gone wrong. I gave it 48 hours because that's what reasonable people do when a system says pending. I kept refreshing the workflow like it was a stock chart. Nothing moved, no new approvals, no notifications. Just the same dead-end box, authorization not completed. Meanwhile, everyone on the floor was already treating me like I'd been promoted. Sales started pulling me into escalations Darren used to dodge. A junior analyst asked if I'd be managing the team now. Even IT updated my distribution groups to include RevOps leadership, which meant the company had effectively told people I'd leveled up, without giving me the authority or pay that came with it. It was the perfect corporate limbo. All responsibility, no leverage. On Wednesday afternoon, Claire texted me, "Did you send the new title letter to the lender?" I stared at my phone for a long time, because I couldn't. Not honestly. That night, I told her what was happening. Not the dramatic version, just the facts. Handshake. Letter. HR portal still pending. A missing authorization step no one would name. She listened quietly, then said, "So, they announced it before it was real?" "Someone did," I corrected. Claire didn't push. She just nodded like she was filing it away. But the disappointment on her face hit harder than Darren's games. Because Claire wasn't disappointed in me. She was disappointed in the idea that the world rewards effort. After she went to bed, I opened my laptop again and stopped looking at the workflow like it was going to fix itself. Lena had told me, "Don't ask Darren, ask the system." So I did. In Workday, there's a difference between what you see and what exists. The main page is sanitized. But if you know what reports to run, and RevOps people always know how to find the report behind the report, you can see the shape of what's happening. I pulled up the job change request tied to my promotion and opened the attachments section. There were 2 documents. The first was the letter HR had handed me. Same title, same effective date, same comp summary. The second file wasn't meant for me, and I could tell by the naming convention. JC Rec Revised Dem, Error 604 PDF, revised. Darren's initials. The timestamp matched the edit. 6:04 p.m. My pulse didn't spike. It went cold. I opened it. The title at the top still read Senior Manager, but the details underneath had been rearranged like someone was trying to make a lie look consistent. The effective date was changed from January 15th to April 1st, the first day of Q2. The base salary increase was reduced, not eliminated. Reduced enough that it wouldn't trigger the same comp review thresholds, and the line that made my stomach tighten was the justification section. 3 sentences Darren had typed himself. Employee has performed at a higher level. Promotion supported in principle. Recommend phased compensation adjustment pending organizational redesign and cost control directives. Supported in principle. Phased adjustment pending redesign. That wasn't a delay. That was a burial with corporate wording over the grave. I sat there staring at the screen and something inside me finally snapped. Not loud, not theatrical. Just a clean break, because I realized what Darren was doing wasn't personal emotion or petty insecurity. It was strategy. By moving the effective date to April 1st, he pushed the cost into the next quarter, where budgets would be reforecasted and approvals would change hands. By lowering the increase, he reduced visibility and made it easier to argue later that the final step wasn't urgent. And by adding organizational redesign, he gave himself a future excuse to say the role no longer existed. He wasn't trying to negotiate. He was trying to erase the promotion without ever saying no. And the public announcement was insurance, because if I complained, I'd look ungrateful. If I pressed, I'd look impatient. If I escalated, I'd look like someone who couldn't handle process. That was the moment I understood a brutal truth. The handshake wasn't for me. It was for everyone else. A performance to keep me producing while Darren rewrote the paperwork in the dark. I took screenshots. I exported the revised request. I captured the metadata created by Darren, edited at 6:04 p.m., attached to my job change. Then I did something I hadn't done in 5 years at that company. I stopped working. Not forever, not dramatically, just for the rest of that night. I sat in silence and let myself feel the anger I'd been swallowing for years. The be steady anger, the don't be difficult anger, the anger that turns competent people into quiet doormats. And then, like a switch, the anger turned into focus. Because Darren had made one mistake. He put his reasoning in writing. The next morning, I didn't confront him. I didn't walk into his office and demand answers. That's what he wanted. An emotional scene he could later describe as spatte, unprofessional. Instead, I scheduled a 30-minute meeting with Marissa. Subject line, quick clarification on promotion, effective date for external paperwork. Mortgage, external paperwork. Neutral, safe, she accepted within 10 minutes. Then, to make sure I wasn't missing anything, I ran one more report. Organizational openings under Darren's cost center. Roles posted internally. Requisitions created. Position changes pending. One listing popped up that made my hands go still on the keyboard. Senior Manager, Revenue Operations, Internal Posting, Draft. Not live yet, but created. And the hiring manager listed was Darren. So while my promotion was being pushed to April, Darren was preparing a fresh senior manager role, one that wouldn't be tied to me, my comp, or Marissa's public announcement. A clean replacement. A quiet reset. I leaned back and stared at the ceiling because suddenly the whole plan became obvious. He wasn't delaying my promotion. He was replacing me, slowly, while keeping me useful. But that was just the beginning. At 3 p.m., I walked into Marissa's office with my laptop closed, my voice steady, and one goal: make this a process problem with evidence, not a personality conflict. And in my pocket, I had the revised document Darren never intended me to see. Marissa's office was the kind of office people joked about without joking. Glass walls, a view of the river, a door that shut with a soft hydraulic click, like the room was designed to keep panic inside. I sat down, kept my laptop closed, and started with the clean version. Thanks for making time. I'm doing a mortgage pre-approval, and the lender needs the effective date in the system. My profile still shows pending. Marissa frowned. Pending? That doesn't make sense. Your comp was approved. I thought it was just lag, I said. Then I pulled the workflow history. I opened my laptop and turned it toward her. First, I showed the main chain. Marissa approved, HR approved, comp approved, finance approved. Then the final box, authorization not completed. No name, no timestamp. Marissa's expression shifted. Not anger yet, more like confusion that hardened into focus. Who's the budget owner on this? She asked. That's the problem, I said. The system doesn't show it to me, but it does show who restarted the request. I clicked into the process timeline and scrolled to the entry. 6:04 p.m., initiator action recorded. Darren M. Marissa's eyes narrowed. He initiated an edit after I announced it? Yes. I didn't add emotion. I didn't say he's sabotaging me. I just kept moving. Then I opened the attachment list and clicked the second PDF. The revised job change request loaded. Marissa read it in silence. The title stayed the same, but everything that mattered had been pushed away like a promise, written in pencil. Effective date changed to April 1st. Salary increase reduced. Justification rewritten. Her jaw tightened. Supported in principle, she read out loud, almost tasting the words. This is not what we approve. I'm not asking for a fight, I said. I'm asking for clarity. Because right now, I'm being treated like I have the job, but the system says I don't. Marissa didn't look at me. She stared at the screen for another 5 seconds, like she was replaying the public handshake in her head and realizing it had been undermined after hours. Then she reached for her phone. Stay here, she said, already typing, and don't forward this to anyone else yet. 2 minutes later, Lena from HR walked in, face controlled, eyes alert. Marissa didn't waste time. Lena, explain this, she said, turning the laptop toward her. Why was a job change revised after executive approval? Lena scanned the document and the timeline. Because the initiator has access to the request, she said carefully. If Darren is listed as the initiator and cost center owner, he can edit and reroute it. And rerouting it hides the final approver from the employee. Marissa said, more statement than question. Lena didn't deny it. It can, yes. Marissa's voice went flat. Get Darren. Now. Lena stepped out. I sat there listening to the hum of the air vent, watching Marissa's face as it went from disbelief to something colder, something operational. Because Marissa wasn't sentimental. She ran a revenue org. She lived in outcomes. Darren walked in 5 minutes later, smiling like he'd rehearsed it. Hey, Marissa, what's up? He said like this was a casual sync. Marissa pointed at the chair. Sit. Darren sat, still relaxed, until he saw my laptop. He glanced at me, then back to Marissa, like he was trying to figure out which version of the story she'd heard. Marissa didn't raise her voice. That's what made it worse. Why did you revise his promotion request at 6:04 p.m. Monday? She asked. Darren blinked once. Then the smile returned. Smaller. Defensive. Oh, that. It's just process cleanup. Budget timing. Finance wants changes aligned to quarter boundaries. It's not... Marissa cut him off with a single hand motion. The effective date was January 15th. You changed it to April 1st. Darren leaned forward, palms open. Temporary. We're in cost control. I was protecting the org. It's still happening. I watched him do what he always did. Speak like the person across from him didn't understand constraints. Marissa clicked to the justification section. You wrote, supported in principle, like you're doing him a favor. Darren's eyes flicked to Lena, then back. Marissa, look, he's great. You know I support him. But we have headcount planning, we have comp optics. If we push this through now, it triggers a review and you didn't mention any of that before I announced it publicly, Marissa said. Darren's voice softened, trying to sound reasonable. I didn't want to distract from the recognition. I figured we'd finalize quietly. Quietly, Marissa repeated, meaning without him knowing his effective date and comp were changed. Darren's jaw tightened. It's normal. Managers adjust requests all the time. Lena spoke, calm but firm. Adjustments that materially change effective date and compensation are supposed to be communicated to the employee and the approving executive, Darren. He looked at her like she'd betrayed him. Marissa didn't give him space to regroup. One more thing, she said and nodded at me. I pulled up the internal requisitions report and turned the screen. Senior Manager, Revenue Operations, Internal Posting, Draft, Hiring Manager. Darren's face changed so fast it felt physical. That's not, he started, then stopped, then tried again. That's for a future reorg, a placeholder. HR told us to draft roles ahead of Q2 planning. Marissa stared at him. So your plan was to push his promotion to Q2 and simultaneously draft a separate senior manager position you control. No, Darren said too quickly. It's not like that. I didn't say a word. I didn't need to. His panic did the talking. Marissa picked up her phone again. I'm looping in finance and employee relations. This is now an integrity issue. Darren's eyes widened. Marissa, come on. We can handle this internally. We are, she said. Internally includes HR and finance, not just you. She stood, opened her door, and spoke to Lena quietly. Lena nodded and left again, already moving like she'd done this before. Darren looked at me, his voice dropping. You didn't have to go around me. I finally spoke, still controlled. I didn't go around you. I went to the workflow. That landed. Because he knew the difference. People can be argued with. Systems can't. Over the next hour, everything sped up. Marissa had HR lock the job change request, so Darren couldn't touch it again. She reassigned the initiator role. She requested the full audit log from Workday. Timestamps, field changes, attachments, approvers. Finance confirmed there was no directive requiring the change. Employee relations scheduled a formal review. Darren sat there watching the ground move under him, trying to interrupt, trying to explain, trying to spin it as responsible management. Marissa didn't let him. At 4:18 p.m., a calendar invite hit my inbox. Promotion Authorization Review. Attendees: Marissa, Lena, HR, Finance Partner, Employee Relations. I didn't schedule it. Darren didn't schedule it. The company scheduled it. And right then, something inside me released. Not relief, not happiness. Just the first clean breath I'd taken in days. They thought I was gone. I wasn't. When I walked out of Marissa's office, the floor felt louder than normal. Keyboards, laughter, the usual noise of people pretending work is just work. But I could feel the shift coming. The kind you only notice when you've been underestimated for too long. Because Darren wasn't going to lose quietly. And my calendar for tomorrow was already filling with meetings I hadn't asked for. The next morning, my badge still worked. That was the first thing I checked, not because I expected to be locked out, but because once you've watched someone quietly rewrite your future, you stop assuming anything is stable. At 8:46 a.m., I walked into the Promotion Authorization Review and saw 4 people already seated. Marissa, Lena, our finance partner, Eli, and someone I hadn't met before, Employee Relations, a woman named Nadine with a legal pad and the kind of calm that tells you she's handled worse. Darren wasn't there. Marissa didn't open with emotion. She opened with process. This meeting is to document a material change made to an approved promotion request after executive approval without employee notice, she said. We're going to establish facts and corrective action. Nadine looked at me. Before we start, did anyone ask you to discuss this with coworkers? No, I said. I haven't. Good, she replied, like she'd just removed one risk from the board. Lena pulled up the Workday audit log on the screen. This wasn't the worker-facing view. This was the administrative version, field-level changes, timestamps, who edited what, and from what device session. There it was, in plain text, 6:04 p.m. Effective date changed, Jan 15, APR 1. Edited by Darren M. 6:05 p.m. Compensation component adjusted. Edited by Darren M. 6:06 p.m. Justification updated. Edited by Darren M. 6:07 p.m. Routing updated. Edited by Darren M. 6:07 p.m. Worker visibility altered by routing change. System-generated note. Nadine tapped her pen once. The key item is routing and visibility, she said. It's one thing to propose a change before approval. It's another to change an approved record in a way that prevents the employee from seeing the final, approver, or status. Eli from finance leaned forward. Also, just to be clear, there was no finance directive to move promotions to Q2. That's not a policy. We approve based on budget availability and leadership sign-off. This was already approved. Marissa's eyes didn't leave the screen, so the finance's slow explanation is false. No one argued. Then Nadine asked the question that felt like a nail going in. Was Darren ever instructed by you to modify the request after approval? Marissa's answer was immediate. No. Nadine wrote something down, then looked at me again. One more thing. Have you experienced any change in your assignments or access since you raised this? I thought about the calendar invites I hadn't asked for, the sudden check-ins, the way Darren had started pulling me into meetings as if nothing was wrong. I've been given senior manager-level responsibility without the title, I said carefully, but no one has restricted access or threatened anything. Yet. Nadine nodded. Noted. Marissa closed her laptop slowly. Here's what's going to happen, she said. We're correcting the promotion today. Effective date returns to January 15th. Compensation returns to the approved amount. Darren is removed from the approval chain permanently, and employee relations will handle the conduct review. My chest didn't jump. I didn't celebrate. I'd learned not to confuse words with outcomes. So I asked the only question that mattered. Back pay? Eli answered. Yes. Once it posts effective January 15th, payroll will run an off-cycle adjustment for the difference. Marissa looked at me. You'll have it within 2 pay periods, and I'm putting it in writing. That was the first micro-release. Not joy, just something unclenching in my ribs. Proof. Paper. Consequence. When the meeting ended, Nadine stopped me at the door. "Do not engage Darren," she said, quiet but firm. "If he contacts you about this, forward it to me and Lena. If he changes your workload in a punitive way, document it and tell us same day." "I understand," I said. She held my gaze for a second. "You handled this correctly. Evidence. Minimal noise. That matters." At 11:02 a.m., my phone buzzed with a workday notification. Job change completed. I didn't open it immediately. I walked back to my desk, sat down, and waited until my hands were steady. Then I clicked. My title now read, Senior Manager, Revenue Operations. Effective date, January 15th. Compensation, updated. I stared at it for a full minute. Not because I needed to process the promotion, but because I needed to process the fact that the system, finally, matched reality. Then another notification landed. Security access update. Manager approval, removed, Darren M. And that was when I knew this wasn't going to be handled quietly in Darren's favor. Around 2:30 p.m., Darren messaged me on Slack. "Hey, can we talk? Just you and me." I didn't answer. I forwarded it to Nadine and Lena. 3 minutes later, Nadine replied, "Do not respond. We will address." At 4:10 p.m., Darren's calendar went dark. Meetings canceled. His recurring leadership sync disappeared from everyone's schedule. The glass office blinds were closed. The next day, an email went out from Marissa to the RevOps leadership group. Interim reporting update. Darren will be out of the office. Please route all approvals and escalations to Marissa and Lena for the next 2 weeks. No explanation, no gossip fuel. Just a clean removal. And that's the thing people don't understand about corporate consequences. They rarely come with fireworks. They come with silence and missing access. Over the following week, employee relations interviewed everyone. Lena, Marissa, Eli, and me. I was asked to walk through the timeline. What I saw when I saw it, what I saved. I handed over the screenshots and exported logs. Nadine thanked me, asked a few pointed questions, and never once tried to frame it like a misunderstanding. Because it wasn't. Darren tried one last move. He emailed Marissa claiming I had improperly accessed documents and violated confidentiality. It was a weak attack, and it failed for one reason. My role legitimately had reporting access, and everything I accessed was tied to my own job change request. It confirmed it. Workday confirmed it. Nadine documented it. That accusation didn't make me look guilty. It made Darren look retaliatory. 2 Fridays later at 5:38 p.m., Marissa called me into her office. Lena was there. Nadine was on speaker. Nadine's voice was measured. "The investigation is complete. Darren violated company policy by materially altering an approved HR record without required disclosure, misrepresenting the rationale for the change, and attempting retaliation after the concern was raised. His employment has been terminated effective today." Marissa didn't look satisfied. She looked tired, but her voice was clean. "I'm sorry you had to carry that," she said, "and I'm sorry I announced something before it was locked." I nodded. "I appreciate you fixing it." Then she said the part I didn't expect. "I also don't want you reporting into anyone who thinks they can do that to you," she said. "If you want it, I'm moving you under my direct line for the next quarter. After that, you'll have the option to take a director track role we're opening. Real role, real budget, no shadows." For the first time in weeks, I felt something close to calm. Not adrenaline, not anger, just steadiness. My steadiness, on my terms. That night, I went home and opened my laptop at the kitchen table. Claire sat across from me, watching my face. "Did it post?" she asked. I turned the screen toward her. Senior Manager. Effective, January 15th. She exhaled like she'd been holding her breath with me. "And the mortgage letter?" she asked. "I can download it now," I said. I didn't tell her every detail about Darren's termination. Not because I wanted to protect him, but because I didn't need to keep living inside the story once it was resolved. Instead, I did something simple. I closed the laptop, took her hand, and said, "We're not crazy. We weren't asking for a favor. We were asking for what was approved. Later, lying in bed, I thought about that public handshake. The applause, the smiles. The way Darren had patted my shoulder like he owned my future. He thought authority lived in rooms he controlled. But authority lives in records, in logs, in approvals you can't rewrite without leaving fingerprints. I didn't win by being louder. I won by being exact. And when I checked my workday profile one last time before sleep, the chain was complete. Every step named, dated, and locked. No pending, no mystery box. Just the truth, finally in the open.